Hey there, it's Melissa at Oaks Farm Poultry on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. We are back in the meat bird production pen with a little flock of 100 Cornish rock cross meat chickens. The last time we did a video on this group was called 101 Broilers 13 days old. They're 15 days old now, and we are down a bird since that last video. So going to catch you up on what happened on the bird that we lost between the last video and this one, and give you a look at the birds. This is, as I'm looking around the pen, so funny, they're all resting right now. They're all at rest right now. So I'm going to turn the camera around and stand up and hopefully don't disturb them too much, but they do naturally kind of go through kind of a circadian rhythm. Like, they have resting periods, and they have, then, they'll go eat and drink and manure, and they kind of just set on a natural cycle, and they kind of do that collectively as a flock. And so then quite frequently they're all resting simultaneously. And Cornish rock cross meat chickens get accused of being lazy a lot of the time, but the fact is they're really not that lazy. They are growing so rapidly, they need to rest. We grow when we sleep, right? So we need the supportive nutrition, hydration, and rest. So we'll take a look here, but there's 100 of them, 15 days old, and they're being raised for meat production. So let's take a look. We do have supplemental heat in their starter pen because ambient temperature is fluctuating a lot, but we're getting a lot of cool temperatures, which is seasonal. It's November 1st, 2023. So the temperatures that we're getting in the cool range are seasonally appropriate, but it is challenging. It's difficult to brood chicks when it's cold, because even at this age, so they're 15 days old, so let's say 2 weeks, even at 2 weeks old, these chicks need an ambient temperature of about 85 degrees. They might tolerate down to about 80 degrees, certainly no lower than 80 degrees. So 80 to 85 degrees is really where we would like to have the ambient temperature. So obviously, the colder the ambient temperature is outside, the harder it is for us to provide them with a comfortable ambient temperature. And so we are trying to accomplish that with supplemental heat from heat lamps. That's a common way to try to warm up small flocks of poultry. So you can see, I was trying to pan around to each group. We have 6 supplemental heat lamps up, and so basically, that's what we're going to see when the temperatures outdoors are cold, and they're really relying on these heat lamps for warmth and for ambient temperature that suits them. They're going to basically be where the supplemental heat is. So gonna also look at some of these groups and look at how they've organized themselves interacting with that supplemental heat, and show you some of the things we look for and what we kind of consider desirable and what we might consider undesirable, and I'll tell you why. So gonna start actually with this group. I'm trying not to disturb them too much because it is kind of interesting when you see virtually an entire flock at rest. And right before I was recording, they were all up. They were lined up down the length of the feeders, and they were busy and had that active period. So they're ready for some rest. But so anyway, so I want to look at this group. I'm going to try to move over here without disturbing them. I want to look at this group here. So this is a pretty good example of what we want to see when it comes to our birds interacting with the supplemental heat and how they're utilizing it. This is really very good, except for one bird. So what we want to see is that there's that gap in the middle where the strongest beam of warmth is coming from the lamp. And we want to see the birds organize themselves around that strongest beam of warmth with their tails in. And that's basically what we see there. We have one there that's face in. but we want to see them tails in, forming a circle or some semblance of a circle around that strongest beam of warmth. This group's pretty good too. I've got 2 here that are face in. This one's also face in. Other than that, they've made a circle. Tails are in. That's a good thing. Okay. Over there, that's not bad either. And we're going to have some of this in here because we have 100 birds and we only have up 6 lamps. But this is ideal because it's just like one ring of birds. Over here is more or less 1 ring of birds, except for that side. There's like 2 and 3 deep. Okay, so over here, same thing. There's like a single ring on the inner part of the circle, but over here there's like 2 or 3 rings deep, right? So let's take a look at that one. That's a good example. So how they're interacting with the lamps is good. Now over there, okay, so we do have the gap in the middle. Most of them tails are in, but toward the furthest side of the circle, you know, it's not really organized into a circle. And we've got birds kind of laying on each other. Okay, and same here. And that one back there is the least organized into a circle. So, like, that's the, and I don't know, I'll have to go back and review that. Either way, I'll probably upload the video, but I could just barely see one right there stretching its leg. I was going to say that's how birds this age end up on their back, and then we lose them to suffocation if we're not right there to turn them over. When they stretch, they'll stretch a leg way, way, way back, and they can actually lose their balance, and that's a time that they can get rolled over on their back. So now, when I said about, you know, their tails into the light, why is that desirable? Well, what we found is if they go face in, it generally indicates that they're perceiving that they're colder, and they'll actually go in sometimes face in and try to either step on top of other birds or burrow underneath other birds. And that's another time that we're going to have a higher risk of losing birds to suffocation or to overheating. If they get burrowed under a pile and they can't get away and they overheat, then, you know, we're going to lose that bird. And so we actually, when we first started raising these, and some of the first flocks we had like in colder weather, we lost some of the smaller birds. Like, that's what would happen. We would find them like at the bottom of a group of birds under a heat lamp, and we'd think, gosh, those bigger birds, they are so mean. They just squash those little birds. Well, the more time we spent around Cornish rock cross meat chickens and the more time we spent observing flocks, we started to learn that it wasn't usually the large birds that caused a problem for the small birds. It was usually the small birds kind of caused a problem for themselves, because that's what they would do. They would go up to, like, say, a group like that, and they'd walk in and they'd try to walk right in the middle of that, and then they'd burrow underneath another bird. Well, then once that little bird warmed up and wanted out, it couldn't get out. So that's why some of this is a concern. I mean, you can't hardly even tell where one bird starts and another bird stops there, because they're just like a carpet of birds. Well, at some point, like these birds closer to the lamp, they're going to get warm and they're going to want out. So when they go to get out, these birds are going to probably be able to get out. But if they find themselves like wedged in there or stuck in there and can't get out, they're either going to overheat, or they're going to get smashed, or they're going to lose their balance and roll over on their back and suffocate. So that's, you know, that's why it's important how we utilize supplemental heat, and that we keep a close eye on how the birds are interacting with it, and that we adjust it. And so some ways that you can adjust supplemental heat lamps is you can add more heat lamps. If you see, you know, like this, if we were having this situation at every lamp in the pen, that would say to me, we need to add more heat lamps. They need more heat lamps to be able to spread out to, because these birds aren't only relying on the supplemental heat lamp, they're starting to rely on body heat from other birds. as well. So if every lamp in the pen was like that, that would be saying to me, adjust, add more lamps. Another way that we can add or adjust is to change the height of this lamp. So for us, we have ours suspended from the ceiling, and we have an S-hook here attaching the chain to the lamp. So I can just lower that by adjusting here. So I could lower it or I could raise it. And if our birds are getting crowded under the lamp, even though it seems kind of counterintuitive, we might actually raise the lamp just a link or two in that chain, because that actually spreads that warmth. It kind of like expands it, spreads that beam of warmth out, so maybe more birds can fit there. When we first started this group, we had just these 4 lamps, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we had them closer together so that like we still had a spot in the center that wasn't warmth, but where we have like these 2 lamps beside each other, there wasn't a dead spot lacking warmth in between them. That made a blanket of virtual warmth across both of those lamps. So that worked at first, because you know, when they first move in, they're literally like the size of a chicken egg, right? And they've grown. I mean, you know, they were like this size, and they've grown so much. Now they're so much bigger. So they need more room. So that's why we decided to spread the lamps out and to add the other 2 lamps. So we get through tonight, get through the night of November 1st. It's supposed to be 25 degrees in rural southeast Ohio. So, you know, it's gonna be a cool night for them. We're hoping that they didn't have tremendous chill stress the first 2 nights that they were here. We're hoping that they're not having tremendous chill stress in this current cold snap, because if we get through the night of November 1st, looking ahead on our forecast out to about November 14th, we're supposed to have daytime temperatures in the 50s and 60s and nighttime temperatures in the high 30s and 40s. And these birds are getting bigger, they're growing in more feathers, they're getting better able to maintain and regulate their own internal temperature, they're getting stronger. So it'll get easier and easier for them, even if it cools down after the 14th. It's not going to be as much of a concern if the temperatures drop a little. You know, we can continue to use supplemental heat and they can continue to stay warm, but it's not going to take as much to warm them up. So we hope we get them through this current little cold spell, and we're going to have some warmer days coming. So we appreciate y'all joining us, and we're going to wrap it up here shortly. They are consuming about 10 gallons of water a day, and we just opened up our 4th bag of feed, so they're completing 150 pounds of feed consumption. So join us again back in the barn, and we hope that y'all are doing well. God bless.